Welcome to Beyond Love and Light podcast, where we bypass the fluff, lift the veil, and explore how to navigate the human experience as a spiritual being. I am Laura Gavander, a transformation coach, psyche, and emotion code facilitator. Join me as we delve into topics relating to human consciousness, alternative healing modalities, quantum physics, and the psychology of spirituality. I bring you insights and information from amazing guests and my own experience and observations. Please remember to subscribe to get notifications. And if you'd like to know more about me and my work, please go to my website, www.lauragavander.com. So let's get on with the podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Love and Light podcast. I am Laura Gavander, and I am so excited and honored to welcome my guest today, Dr. Bradley Nelson. Dr. Nelson is a veteran holistic physician, but he's way more than that. I'm going to let him tell you more about his background, how he got to where he is now. But he is the creator of the Emotion Code. He is also the author of the same book by the title, which is right here. I know it's showing up backwards. He's also most recently the author of the Body Code. And we will go into both of these in a little bit. But I just had to say before we get started that I usually don't have the opportunity to meet my guests in person. And in this case, I actually had the honor and the privilege and the pleasure of spending a weekend at a workshop not too long ago. And I got to just be in the presence of this incredible man and learn just so much that he has to share about how this work was created, his authenticity, his passion, and just really, really, really inspiring. So I'm just really happy to be able to share this with everyone. So Dr. Brad, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Laura, so much. It's great to see you again and great to be on your show.
Great. Well, so happy to have you here. So I'd love for you to just talk, because you do have a really great story. Instead of me just reading your bio, you have a way of really distilling it and just telling people how you got from being, I want to say traditional, chiropractic, going that route, but there's even more interesting elements to it, to say how you got here, how Emotion Code was created.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a long story. I'll shorten it down. The abbreviated version of this is when I was 7 years old, I was really sick with the measles, and my mother asked my father if he would pray for me, and he did. And in the middle of this prayer, I was miraculously healed. And to go from being really sick one moment to being totally well in the next instant is just so bizarre. But I experienced it, and I'll never ever forget it as long as I live, because it's so crazy. And in the travels that I've done around the world, I've occasionally run into people who have had that kind of experience. And we all agree it isn't something you can ever forget. Well, that taught me a couple of things. It taught me that there's a higher power we can draw upon, number one. And number two, it taught me that healing can take place instantaneously. Uh, doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does, and it's always exciting, when it does. So then, when I was 13 years old, I ended up having kidney disease, and there was nothing medically that could be done, but I was healed of that through some old time holistic doctors, and these doctors practiced out on the edge of town in the middle of a wheat field in a trailer house, and I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life. After they healed me of kidney disease, which was terribly painful and very scary, I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life. So I wanted to be like them. And it's interesting because they were very discouraging to me. I can remember lying on my back on their treatment table in their trailer house out on the edge of town where they practiced. And I can remember looking up at them saying, when I grow up, I want to do what you're doing. And they would say, no, you don't. They'd say, if you go to chiropractic school or some school of natural healing, they'll fill your head so full of fixed ideas, you won't be able to think for yourself. You'd be like a zombie. And so, I took that to heart. Well, then I discovered computers. And that was in 1980. And in the early 80s, I had a business called the Computer Tutor, where I would go into people's businesses, people that had just bought a new IBM PC for their business, but there was no software at that point for anything. And so I would write the software, customized for their business. And that's what I did. And it was really fun. and got to meet a lot of interesting people. And and then my father asked me a question one day that brought me back to this original dream of going into the healing arts and specifically into chiropractic. And and so then it brought me kind of back to this point of trying to figure out what to do and if to decide if I really wanted to go into the healing arts. And it was actually an answer to prayer, um, really a powerful answer actually that I got that brought me back into the healing arts. So then when I went to chiropractic school, I remember one day sitting in class and my instructor was talking about how the brain is a computer, and I can remember as he's talking about the brain as a computer, thinking, wow, the brain is a computer. That's interesting. I wonder if we'll ever have the technology to be able to tap in to this computer that is the brain and get information out of it. Will we ever be able to access that computer? Because if we could, that'd be unbelievable. I mean, if we could actually ask questions of the source itself, the internal computer, about what's really wrong with people, wow, what a game changer that would be. And I thought, well, maybe in 200 or 300 years, we'll have that technology. I mean, think about that. Um, how powerful that would be, because all the answers must be in there somewhere, right? About what's wrong with people and what they really need. Instead of having to guess, you could go right to the brain. You could ask. And I thought, well, yeah, someday in the far future, maybe. And I put it out of my mind. But little did I know that I'd spend the rest of my career actually doing exactly that, figuring out how to communicate with that internal computer, with the subconscious mind. And that's really exactly what this work is all about. So let me explain a little bit about that computer that is the subconscious mind. So I'm sitting here at my desk, at my laptop computer, right? So I've got a screen,
Mm.
and on the screen I see information, and I can see messages and things, and etc. And then there's a keyboard, and I can use the keyboard to put in information. And I can go on Google, I can ask questions and things like that. And so it's a screen slash keyboard interface. And my desktop computer is the same way. My phone, on the other hand, like your phone, has icons, right? It's a screen where we can see things, we can move things around, and we can touch things. So it's a touch screen interface, and your finger is part of that, and the screen is part of that. Well, the subconscious mind is a completely different interface. It's really an alien interface, if you will, to us. It might as well be from another planet, because it's not like any other interface we're used to at all. We're used to seeing things on a screen. Well, there is no screen of the body. There's no screen. We're used to putting information in with keyboards or with a finger, and it's not like that at all. Instead, what I finally understood, and it took me a long time to figure this out, the screen of the computer of the body is symptoms. The subconscious mind communicates to us through symptoms. In other words, if you've got migraine headaches, that's a symptom. In other words, it's a message from the subconscious mind, in a sense, that there's something else going on. If you are dealing with infertility, that's a symptom. It's a communication from the subconscious mind that there's something else that's going on that needs attention. If you're dealing with depression, that's a symptom. And it may be a very difficult symptom to live with, but it is nevertheless a symptom. And anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and self-sabotage, those are all symptoms on the screen, if you will, of the subconscious mind, which really, if you think about it, it has no other way to really communicate with us. There's no billboard that it can post things on. It's just the physical body. And it's through physical and mental and emotional symptoms that the subconscious computer system communicates with us. It's so weird. It's kind of like it's like that movie E.T. and all the scientists are trying to figure out, well, how are the aliens going to communicate with us? And you remember that, or not? Was it E.T.? Yeah, it was E.T. You remember when they were communicating through, or maybe I'm thinking of a different one.
Oh, Close Encounters, maybe?
I'm thinking of Close Encounters. Yeah, where they're using the sound and the big, the light board and playing the musical notes and everything. They're trying to communicate with the aliens. Well, the subconscious mind is this computer that communicates through symptoms. And so if you're having a hard time finding your soulmate, guess what? That's a symptom from the subconscious mind. If you can't make enough money, that's a symptom. You can't break through the glass ceiling, that's a symptom. You've been diagnosed with cancer, that's a symptom. Infertility, asthma, all of these autoimmune disorders, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, those are all symptoms. They're symptoms. They're the way that the subconscious mind communicates to us that there's something going on that needs attention. Now, see, in Western
I
medicine,
was just gonna say, this is
right?
completely different than Western medicine.
Totally. Because in Western medicine, they look at the symptoms as the actual problem. And of course, a lot of these things are a problem in a sense. I mean, they can be very difficult to deal with, but they're really still the symptom. And so, as an example, I remember there's a story I wrote about in the Emotion Good book. There's a woman that came in to see me many years ago. She had lifted one of her kids and hurt her back. So she came in to see me and she told me that, just kind of offhand, she said, "Yeah, I'm here for my back pain. I also have a migraine going on." But, that wasn't why she came. She had no idea. That she just thought that was something completely, that she'd been dealing with pretty much every day for like 20 years. And so I found a bone out of alignment way up in the base of her neck, up here, the base of her skull, realigned it, and suddenly, boom, the migraine was gone. Now, that's a migraine that she'd had for three weeks, as I recall, and without any let up. And she was taking all these heavy duty medications, and suddenly it was gone. And her migraines didn't come back. She came back into the office, I don't know, some time later, 5-6 days later, and she was actually mad. And I thought, I mean, she was obviously angry, and I thought she was angry at me. And I thought, I wonder what I did. And she said, no. She said, I'm not mad at you. She said, I'm mad at all these doctors that I've seen over all these years that should have known. They should have told me that something like this could be a possibility for me. They're doctors. They should have known. She said, I can't tell you how much money I've spent on all these medications. I can't tell you how many months and years of my life I've lost just laying on a bed in a room with the shutters drawn, trying to deal with this horrific pain. She said, I haven't had it, I had migraines pretty much every day for all those years, 2 decades. And I know they're gone now. They haven't come back since I was here. She said, I'm mad because I've lost all that time and I'm never going to get it back. And so, so that's the kind of thing that goes on all the time. Well, in her case, the migraine headaches can be thought of as being just a symptom, a message that there was a bone out of alignment in her neck. And so as time went on, I got better and better at communicating with this computer system, this alien computer of the subconscious mind, and asking questions and getting answers. And it's a fascinating thing. I mean, Laura, I'll tell you this. I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of the first things that happened to me, for a long time, I practiced this method in chiropractic where I had a special table that would raise up vertically, and a patient would stand up against this table and put their nose in the slot and grab onto the handles on the side. I'd press a button and the table would lay down horizontally and the foot plate would drop away so that I could look at their leg length. Right. And I could measure their leg length. And I found that, and I actually learned a methodology of chiropractic where I found that if I pressed on a certain bone, if that bone was out of alignment, the leg length would shorten, right? One leg would go short because it was an irritation to the body. And so I found that I could touch different parts of the body and I could essentially get somebody to finally line up, right? Because everything, all the irritations, all the misalignments would be gone, right? And that's how I worked for a long time. Well, one day this guy comes in and I'm working on him. I get him all finished. He's all lined up. Legs are perfectly the same length. And for some reason, I found myself just kind of thinking about his left kidney. I don't remember why now, but I was thinking about his left kidney. And I came back and checked his legs and one leg was way off now. And I thought, wait a minute. I just balanced him out. What? I hadn't said anything. It was just, I was thinking about his kidney. So then I thought, well, I wonder what's going on. Let me check his left or his So I thought about his right kidney and his legs balanced. I thought about his left kidney and boom, his legs imbalanced. And that was mind blowing. And I thought, well, wait, somehow his subconscious mind knows what I'm thinking, even. And yes, that's one of the things that we know now. The subconscious mind. You see, it's like we're in this age now, finally, where the limitations that we've arbitrarily placed on ourselves and on our own abilities are actually just falling away left and right. We're starting to realize what we're capable of, and so as time went on, I realized as I became more and more able to communicate with the subconscious minds of my patients, I learned that they really truly did have all the answers. And what I found was kind of astonishing, because what I found was that all of my patients, no matter how young or old they were, no matter if they were suffering from something physical or mental or emotional, if they'd been diagnosed with a disease, they all had one thing in common. And that was what I came to call their emotional baggage. In other words, they all had uh, emotional energies trapped in their bodies from emotional experiences that they had been through that they probably would rather not have gone through. And we all have this emotional baggage. I came to call these trapped emotions. And to understand how emotion can become trapped in the body, you have to understand a little bit uh, about the body itself. So if you think about it, I mean, if you look at your hand, uh, it looks normal, feels solid, makes a nice thunk sound if you slap it on your desk. But if you were to put it under a microscope, a big microscope, if you were to start zooming in and you keep zooming in and you zoom in past the level of the cells, past the organelles that make up the cells, and then to the level of the DNA, the molecules, and you keep zooming in past that, beyond that, eventually you get to a point where you're looking at a single individual atom. And if you looked inside the atom, you'd see, well, there's really nothing in there. It's just empty space. In fact, we are pretty much entirely empty space. Some quantum physicists recently said, well, if you could remove all the empty space from everyone's body on Earth, you could actually fit all 7.8 billion people in the world into a box the size of a sugar cube.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. And I think that it must be frustrating for these guys, because it's like, they're trying to tell everybody, they're trying to help everybody wrap their heads around these ideas, and people just don't get it. It's just so hard to understand and so hard to wrap our heads around, because we live in this 3D physical world, and our bodies have mass and they have weight, and yet we know that if you shine a bright enough light at the body, your bones will make shadows, and they call that X-ray, right? X-ray is just a form of light. It's on that electromagnetic spectrum. Well, anyway, so what happens is, because we're beings of energy, these scientists have understood this for a long time. And Albert Einstein, arguably maybe the smartest person that's ever lived, I mean, he said the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies, because he understood what our bodies really are, what the universe really is. He understood it better than about anybody else alive. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy and frequency and vibration. And so that's where we are right now. We're moving finally out of this post-industrial understanding of the body as just a robot and all the separate parts as just machines, to this new understanding where we're realizing that the body itself is this massively complex energy field, but yet it is just energy. And so, well, emotions are energy too. And every emotion has its own frequency. And if you're feeling a certain emotion and the emotion is maybe really intense, or maybe an emotion is coming up for you and you decide you don't want to go there and you just stuff that emotion, in either of those cases, the energy of that emotion can become trapped. So that when the event is over, when the bully moves away, or your divorce gets finalized, or you quit that awful job and get a better one, or whatever it is, the energy that became trapped in the body, the energy that was experienced that couldn't be processed, is still in the body. It's stuck there like a little ball of anger or resentment or grief or sadness or whatever it might be. And so this is what I found with my patients. So think about this. I mean, I'm this old computer programmer. Now I'm working on the computer of the body, and month by month, year by year, decade by decade, I'm hammering away at this problem with my patients, working on the live human computer and trying to figure out how to communicate with it better and how to get answers. And it's an astonishing thing. It's an astonishing journey that I have been on. And so
It's
how
still
it works,
evolving.
basically.
It's still
Yeah.
evolving, right?
Yeah, it works. It's so amazing. So what we do is we have a chart that looks like this. It's a chart of emotions, and if you look up emotion code chart on Google, you'll find millions of these probably out there. And there are 60 emotions on here. The chart's divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. And so the way that it works is, um, let's say, as an example, if I were there with you, Laura, and if we wanted to find and release a trapped emotion from you, I could simply ask you some questions, and you could hold out an arm, and we could muscle test you. And this is called kinesthetic testing. Dr. David Hawkins, in his book Power versus Force, talks a lot about all the research he did on this for many years, and how he was able to actually calibrate a scale of human consciousness. But anyway, it works. You could hold out your arm, and in fact, you can. Any of you can try this at home. If I were there with you, Laura, and if you were to hold out your arm parallel to the floor, and if I were to put my fingers on, down near your wrist, if you were to say a true statement, make a true statement like, my name is Laura, that would be true. If I were to press down on your outstretched arm, you'd be able to resist me, because that's a true statement. But if you were to say something incongruent or untrue, like if you were to say, oh, my name is Jill, that's not congruent. And so then your arm would weaken and under downward pressure. And so you can try this with anybody. And this is something that kind of started out, I think, as almost like a parlor trick, decades ago. And going back to the 50s, I think people would do this thing where you'd hold out an arm, and if you were holding on to sugar, it would weaken you. If you were holding on to something like powdered milk, you'd still be strong, things like that. So people were kind of dancing around the edges of this unbelievably powerful computer that is the body. So what we could do with you is we could ask, do you have a trapped emotion we can release now? And maybe it's about a specific thing. So let's say that maybe you have a headache or low back pain. We could ask, do you have a trapped emotion that we can release now that's contributing to, say, your backache? And if the answer comes back yes, at that moment, or in other words, if testing your arm is strong, that's a yes answer coming from the subconscious mind. At that point, we could go to our chart of emotions, and we could ask where on the chart that emotion is. We'd start by asking, is it in column A? Maybe that's weak, so that would be a no. So it's in column B. So then we could divide column B up into 2 parts and ask, is it in an odd row? Maybe that's a yes. Then we'd ask, is it in column B, row 1? Maybe that's a no. Column B, row 2, or row 3. Maybe that's, maybe we, anyway, one of those would be strong. And so then that would narrow us down to a list of 5. So let's say it ends up in B1. Well, then we've got 5 emotions there: effort unreceived, heartache, insecurity, overjoy, or vulnerability. Then we would simply ask, well, all right, is it effort unreceived? Maybe that's a no. Heartache, maybe that's a yes. And so you can identify emotions just that fast and usually release them. And we release them by just taking a magnet or your hand. And if you're working on yourself, you can start at the forehead and go over the top of the head to the back of the neck. Or if you're working on somebody else, you can either do that or go straight down their back a few times, because what we're doing is we're putting energy and intention into the governing meridian, which starts at the tailbone, goes straight up the back, over the top of the head to the inside of the upper lip. And that's all it takes. So most people can find and release a trapped emotion in less than a minute once they have the the knowledge of how to do it. And the knowledge of how to do it is actually all in the emotion code book. The whole thing is in there. And we do live events and things like the one that you came to.
Right.
And yeah, anybody can learn how to do this. It's actually really simple.
So the thing that's most mind blowing for when I first started doing it, and then also working with clients, and I kind of love to see their reaction because everyone has the same reaction when you show them the chart, and there's 60 emotions, and the fact that the subconscious knows the exact one. Now, just to clarify,
Yeah.
since some people may have not have caught that, we're not testing 60 emotions. We're narrowing it down by columns and rows.
Right.
So we're process of elimination. So people they're just like, oh my God. There's not one single person that I work with that isn't astounded by the how specific it is,
Yeah.
how usually they're able to connect dots they were never able to connect before. And it's quantum physics. Like I explain to people, it's the field. Maybe you want to just touch upon that a little bit so people kind of sort of understand it, and because it does sound like magic.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
does.
Well, I believe it was Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer, who said, any sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from magic. And this is not magic,
Mhm.
but it is just a very advanced technology. And all we're doing is asking the subconscious mind what it knows.
Mm.
And it knows an awful lot. It knows everything. It knows everything. It remembers every face you've ever seen in a crowd, your whole life, everything you've ever eaten in your whole life, um, everything you've ever tasted or touched or smelled. The whole history of your health or disease is in the subconscious mind. And in that computer, that subconscious computer mind of yours that is turning your breakfast right now into millions of new cells. It's it's really the science of God. I mean, it's
Mm.
the subconscious mind is so incredibly powerful. We really have not even begun to scratch the surface on what it knows and what it can do. But I think the subconscious mind within each one of us is actually what is running everything, keeping air moving in and out of your lungs and keeping your heart beating and creating trillions of new chemical reactions every split second to keep you alive.
Mm.
Well, so one of the things that I found that was so fascinating um, was that the subconscious minds of my patients seem to already know
Mm.
uh, what they already knew what was on the chart, for
Right.
example.
Exactly. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story about the field. Okay. One of my very favorite stories. There's actually a book written, and the book is by Rupert Sheldrake, who is one of my favorite people in the world, an Oxford educated scientist, of course, from the UK. And he was doing this study. He's done lots of studies on human consciousness, but also they did a study on animal consciousness. And what they knew was that sometimes dogs, for example, will know when their owner is coming home, and the dog will always be at the door, always be at the window when the owner comes home. And so the question was, well, when does the dog go to the window or the door? And some people said, well, the dog goes to the window when it can hear the owner's car coming down the street because they have super sensitive hearing and they can tell what their owner's car sounds like. And other people said, no, it's because the owner comes home at the same time every day and the dog has kind of an internal clock and knows what time it is. And those both sound plausible, right? So what they did is they actually did this study, and they had video cameras, I guess, on the dogs and on the owners and so on. What they found was that the moment the owner started thinking about going home, no matter what time of the day it was, when the owner began thinking about going home, that is when the
Mm.
dog would go to the window. Now, how can you explain that? Well, it's in terms of quantum physics, it makes sense. In terms of Newtonian physics and the old world that we've been living in, it makes absolutely no sense at all. But in quantum physics, we know that really everything truly is connected. And so Rupert Sheldrake refers to this as the morphic field, this field of intelligence, this field of consciousness that connects everything and everyone. And it goes by many different names. the light of Christ. It's been called the database of all that is, universal intelligence that fills the universe. All of those things I think are describing the same thing. So the bottom line is that I found when I was in practice that my patients already knew what was on this chart, even if they'd never seen the chart before. And the other thing that was interesting is I would have patients sometimes that would come to me from other countries who did not speak a word of English. And nevertheless, I found that I could talk to them in English. And although consciously they wouldn't understand what I was saying, their subconscious mind would understand perfectly what my intention was. And I could work on them and find trapped emotions in English, and maybe they speak Hindi or something. And yet I was able to work on them with no problem at all. It's been a fascinating, really an amazing thing. Um, and, during those years when I was in practice, I had the perfect laboratory, really, because I had patients coming in to see me constantly with all kinds of interesting problems. And I got to a point where I was not worried at all. I wasn't afraid at all, no matter what a person had been diagnosed with, for example, no matter what they were dealing with. I knew that the subconscious mind held the answers to that. And I remember one day a woman came in to see me who had she was dealing with chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, and her life was really, kind of a wreck. But I was in kind of a playful mood, and I said to her after I had just finished sitting with her as a brand new patient, and getting all of her info and taking her history and everything, and I said, listen, I'm basically clueless about what's wrong with you. Her eyes got really big, and she looked at me, and I said, don't worry. Your subconscious mind knows what's wrong with you. It knows what the underlying reasons are why you're not able to get well. And I know how to talk to it. So it's going to be okay. And she did get well. In fact, during the last 10 years that I was in practice, most of the people that I saw had been told there was really no help for them, no hope for them at all. And yet the vast majority of them, with just a couple of exceptions, were actually able to get well. And so finally, and again, remember that, the number one most common thing that I found on everybody was emotional baggage. So eventually I knew that I had to leave my practice. I had to actually write a book and get this information out to the world. It had to go out to the world. It wasn't just for me. And so I did. So the Emotion Code book came out in 2007. And then in 2008, one morning I woke up and my mind was full of instruction. And the instruction was, you need to take everything that you've learned about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn to make it available to everyone, everywhere. And so that now is what we call the Body Code. And this is, of course, a new book that just came out. That's a wonderful book, beautiful book. It's all in color and so on. And they've done a phenomenal job. St. Martin's Press is our publisher. But you'll notice here that there are 6 imbalances. We call this the Body Code map. And let me explain this really quickly. Remember, I was a computer programmer. Now I'm a doctor. Now I've got patients that I'm seeing day in, day out. I always have a computer there so that if I find something new on somebody, some new kind of imbalance that's creating problems for this person, I figure out where to put it. I categorize it, and I'm building this really what ends up being a massive mind map that has 6 categories, and then lots of subcategories. And so these are the things that I found by communicating to the subconscious mind, the computer within all my patients over all those years. I found that there are really 6 different kinds of imbalances that cause all of our trouble, that cause all of our symptoms, mental, emotional, and physical. And so those are things like energies, like trapped emotional energies, which we've talked about, the energy of traumas, other kinds of things. Here we have imbalances of the circuitry and the systems of the body, imbalances of the chakras, for example, and the meridians and things. But also in this area, we have things like disconnections between the spirit and the physical part of the body, things that you won't find anywhere else, but that I was able to find. And some of these things really came through prayer, because I had a habit of asking for help with every person that I saw from up above. It was a totally private, personal habit. Nobody ever knew that I was saying a short, quiet, silent prayer for them. But I felt like I needed all the help I could get. And then here we have toxins. If you have toxins in the body, you're not going to be as healthy as you could be. Over here, we have nutritional and lifestyle issues. If you don't have enough certain, vitamins and minerals, you're not going to be as healthy as you could be. Misalignments, any tissue can misalign. And then up here, we have pathogens. And we know all about those, since since the coronavirus has happened, et cetera. And so what I found that was so interesting is that as I built this database, which only existed then in my computer at my office, my patients knew what was in this map. And it was an amazing thing. I remember one day, for example, a woman came in to see me, and she told me that she'd been coughing for a year, day and night. And she'd been to several doctors. They'd done x-rays, CAT scans. Nothing was wrong with her. Her lungs were perfectly clear. And yet she's coughing all day long and all night long. And she told me that her husband had actually moved into a bedroom on the other end of the house because he couldn't sleep with her coughing all night long. The medical profession had nothing for her. They had no idea what was going on. And so she told me, she said, I'm afraid, that I'm going to lose my marriage over this if I can't get this fixed, because my husband, he's been sleeping for months on the other side of the house, and this is so miserable. I don't know what to do. And so I tested her, and using this map, okay, I was taken to this area right here, toxins, and to a little subcategory called, common household chemicals, I think at the time. And so I had some lists of common household chemicals, and her subconscious mind is guiding me to this. I'm asking questions, she's holding her arm out, and I'm asking questions and getting yeses and nos. And her subconscious mind guides me to these chemicals. So I'm looking at this page and going through these one by one. And I finally arrive at this chemical liniment called camphorphenique. Camphorphenique. And when I got to that, and I said, okay, do you use camphorphenique? I mean, her face turned pale and her eyes just became like saucers. And she said, camphorphenique? And I said, yeah, camphorphenique. Do you use that? And she said, well, yes, I use camphorphenique. She said, every night, she said, the last thing that I do at night is I go over and I visit this elderly friend of ours, this elderly woman that's been a friend of the family forever. And she loves me to rub her feet with camphorphenique. It's the last thing I do every day. And then I go home and go to bed. And I said, okay, well, you need to stop doing that because your body does not like this camphorphenique. And that was it. No more coughing. You see, her subconscious mind was able to communicate right. that's what she needed, right? So anyway,
that's wild that it's so specific. That's why the surprised expression on her face, because it's so people understand these sessions are mostly done remotely. I mean, what you were describing was we're working with a person.
I was live and in
person, right? Live and in person. You're going to do the muscle testing with the arm. Yep. So most of these sessions are done remotely. So people may be wondering, well, how does that happen if you can't muscle test with the person right there with you? So if you can, I mean, you kind of explained it with the field, but just so people understand how this actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a fascinating thing. I never learned how to do this from anyone. This somehow the ability to do this knowledge of how to do this was just already in my mind. And the only time I ever used this ability to work on people at a distance in my practice was if a patient went on vacation or something and called me. And sometimes that would happen. A patient would go on vacation or go away for business. And sometimes they'd call me and they'd say, oh my gosh, I hurt my knee, I hurt my back, my neck's killing me, I got a migraine. Can you help me? And I was always able to help them. And in terms of quantum physics, it makes perfect sense because, there's a principle called entanglement. Mm-hmm. And in that principle, basically what it means is that that energies or particles, really energies, can become entangled or connected through intention at vast distances, distances at least as great as the diameter of the Earth, which we've proven, many, many times, and studies have proven this as well. But probably at much, much greater distances than that. And so yes, this is we have, like I said, we've got probably around 12,000 practitioners now in 80 countries plus around the world, and they are working with other people in other areas of the world, in other countries. And many of these people they'll never actually meet, but many of their lives will be changed from the work that they're doing, because it's all about quantum physics. And in quantum physics, it makes sense that you can actually connect with another person energetically, and you can actually entangle with their energies, and you can make changes, and you can swap out an old reality for a new reality. And in quantum physics, that's called the collapsing of the wave function, where one particular energy frequency is collapsed in favor of a new one. And so it's all explainable in quantum physics. Most of us don't have any exposure to quantum physics, though. And so to most people, it just seems kind of impossible. Well, look, how does your cell phone work? I mean, we take these for granted, don't we? And like Arthur C. Clarke said, any sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from magic. I mean, if you were to go back even, 30 or 40 years, but let alone maybe 100 or 200 years, if you were to show somebody from 200 years ago that, you have this little communication device, and I could call someone literally anywhere on earth right now and get them to answer this. And I could have a conversation with somebody in Dubai right now, or Tokyo if I want to, right? And how does that work? Well, it's quantum physics. That's how it works. And that's how this also works, this connection between people. And so it's really amazing. I'll tell you a story. One day, I remember I was on a radio show, and doing this show, and I'm sitting here at home in southwestern Utah, and the show is based in Virginia, and a woman calls in from Ohio, and she's talking about how she has this problem. She's got she has a hiatal hernia, where her stomach is protruding up into her chest cavity, and she's got the reflux constantly, and so on. It's just miserable. So I said, well, can I tune into you and see if I can help you? And so she said, okay, fine. Her name was Barbara, and I'm actually still connected with her. This is many years ago when the book first came out. And anyway, so I tested her remotely just by tuning in, connecting to her energy. And there's a very concrete way that we do this, that we teach in the book, and so on. And within like 30 seconds, I found she had a trapped emotion, an emotional energy of resentment. And it was from, I think, age 38. She was 52, I believe, at the time, age 38. And she said, oh, okay. She said, I know exactly what that is, this resentment from age 38. And so I released it from her, working on her remotely, right? And it felt a little bit better. And so I, finished the show. And so the next day, she emails me and tells me the story. Then that day, she was scheduled to go in and have surgery. And what they do is they open you up, they pull the stomach down, and then they staple your they staple your stomach basically kind of to the size of your body. And I had an aunt actually who died on the operating table having one of these things done, this procedure.
Awful.
Yeah. So anyway, she goes in to have the surgery because this has been going on for years, right? And it's been getting worse and worse and worse. She goes in to see the doctor, and the first thing that they do is they give her some barium to swallow so they can really clearly see the outline of everything before they go in and they do the surgery. And the doctor studies the films for a little bit, and he comes back out and he said, well, he said, it's not there anymore. He said, we're canceling the surgery. Luckily, her doctor, was an ethical doctor, because some of them would have just gone ahead and done it. But he said, it looks completely normal, textbook normal. He said, we don't see any signs of fissuring or pitting or anything like that. He said, it's completely how it's supposed to be. So we're canceling this surgery. You can go home. And, to this day, She's never had any other trouble with that. So anyway, yeah, it absolutely works at a distance. And I'll tell you something, if you learn how to do this work, and I would highly recommend that you do, because it's easy, you can do this.
Fun.
And
So
it's
fun.
it's so fun. And you can help and heal your family members and your loved ones. And if you want to have a new career doing something that's incredibly rewarding, you can do that too. We have a pathway for certification. But I'll tell you something, when you play with this and you try this the way that we teach you in the book, and the first time that you're working on someone that you care about and they're in another state or on the other side of the world, and you get an immediate result by releasing some emotional baggage
You'll
from
be
them,
hooked.
you'll be hooked. You'll realize in that moment, wow, this is real. And we haven't really known. See, it's like we're born into this world and nobody really knows what we're capable of. And so it's like we're born as babies and we immediately start being lied to about what's possible. And so now we're trying to scrape away all of the lies and realize, wow, we're divine creations of a divine creator. And we have this unbelievably powerful subconscious mind within us, and we can do unbelievable things. But when that happens to you, yeah, your life will change in that moment. You'll never be the same again.
No, and the potential is just, you just realize, I mean, that's what's so exciting about working with people with this. And also what I've witnessed myself is just, there's no limitations anymore. There's a sense of empowerment that you get when you can heal yourself, and it's quick and it's easy. So there's something I'm curious about. Just wondering how you would explain. So somebody has a trapped emotion, say from they're 12 years old, and they start developing symptoms in their 50s.
Mhm.
What's the why would it suddenly be coming out at this point in their life, right? This trapped emotion, why would it activate, whatever word you want to use,
Right
now,
away.
if you've been holding on to it for so many years? Have you made any connection about why something would show up at that point?
Well, yeah, there are. Well, first of all, sometimes things take time to percolate and develop. I mean, think about it this way. Um, if you get exposed to cancer now, okay, like let's say you live near Chernobyl and you get exposed to radiation.
Mhm.
Well, does cancer appear that day? No. How about the day after? No. It might not appear for 10 or 20 years, right? But that's because of what you were exposed to. Think about in this area back in the early days in the 50s when they were doing a lot of nuclear testing in Nevada at the Nevada test range. John Wayne and other people were filming movies here, like John Wayne, Rita Hayworth. They were filming The Conqueror here, right in this area. And everybody that was in that movie basically died of cancer, but it didn't happen right away. It took time, right? Um, so that's one thing. Emotional baggage like that takes time, like anything else, uh, to kind of percolate and then reach a kind of a critical mass. But the ultimately what you want to do is you want to try to remove all that emotional baggage so it doesn't manifest as something really really serious down the road. There are there are other reasons too. One of the things that happens to us is as we get older, I mean, when we're younger, we have a pretty big margin of error, right? And we can do things that are kind of crazy, and we can get away with it, and so on, because we got this big safety buffer margin. As we get older, that margin gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and the more
Tolerance level also.
yes, exactly. And also, I mean, if you look at the body code, see what I found with my patients was that the more imbalances they had going on in these different areas, the more pathogens were living in their bodies, the more misalignments they had, the more nutritional deficiencies they had, the more toxic they were, the more emotional baggage they had, and so on. The more likely they were to start manifesting symptoms, and so that's really why. Another thing that can happen too is that's kind of interesting, uh, especially with emotional baggage that's inherited.
Mm.
Let's say, for example, that that your mother was 30 when she had you, and she passed to you some kind of a problem. Maybe when you get to be 30, because that was the age that your mother was, that may all of a sudden kind of spring into life because of that connection. So there are some really interesting reasons. I mean, the subconscious mind and really this kind of healing work that is highly developed, but yet in its infancy as far as global acceptance, um, is it's really limitless. I mean, as far as um, you're not ever really going to learn everything there is to know about it. I mean, I'm still learning new
Mm.
things, and so it's something that you can really sink your teeth into. If you're looking for something to sink your teeth into, this will do it, because um, you'll never really learn all of it, but very easily, very quickly, you can learn enough of it to actually start making a dramatic difference in the lives of your friends and loved ones.
Yeah, and it's incredible how it could be instant. It can be instant. Someone can be relieved of pain instantly.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and would you agree with this, that sometimes if there is a physical thing going on the body, it may take a couple of days for the energy to, the emotion to pass through, for the energy. Would you say also it's also may not always be that instant, because if there's something,
Yeah.
especially if someone's carrying pain that they've had in a certain area of their body for years and years,
Mhm.
right? It may take a little bit of time to kind of work its way through the body.
Yeah, it kind of depends. I mean, I've seen countless cases where physical pain is just instantly gone, because remember that physical pain
Is
is a message, like on the screen of the computer of the subconscious mind. It's like a message there that's persisting, saying, "Hey," it's like a red light that's flashing. "Hey, you need to fix this." It's like the check engine light that's on in your car. Well, if that check engine light is on in your car and you add oil, and that was the reason why the check engine light was on, suddenly boop, the light goes off. And that's how it is in the body too. You got physical pain. If you address the underlying reason, often that physical pain will just blink off and be gone. And when it happens instantaneously, it's always, I mean, still with me, even though I've seen it so many times, it's still really fun and kind of mind blowing, right? But it happens all the time, and people do find that. But sometimes things do take time, right? Sometimes things take time, and so you never know. Everybody's different. I mean, the healing process, it's kind of like unwinding. It's like taking a piece of paper that's been crumpled up and unraveling it, or like peeling an onion, right? You peel off these layers one at a time, and then eventually you get to a point where it's totally peeled, but that can take time. So everybody's different.
I think it's also important to mention, since we basically were addressing pain, issues with pain in the body, that this process, motion code, works for other areas of their life, and just so people understand the impact by not releasing these trapped emotions, whether it's relationships, financial, career. I mean, if you can just talk a little bit about that. It's not just pain in the body, it's
No.
really what you can allow into your life and what you want to manifest, and how these things actually can block things from coming to you.
Yeah, well, absolutely right. I mean, PTSD. We've seen soldiers coming back, for example, from the Middle East, from Iraq and Afghanistan, who were a wreck, and we've seen cases where their wife has actually completely fixed them just by releasing the emotional baggage from those traumas and completely turned them around. Um, we've seen, oh gosh, uh, it's not just that. It's also all these other manifestations. It's all these symptoms. Remember, symptoms can include things like anxiety and panic attacks and depression and eating disorders, and but also all of these other physical kinds of issues. I mean, if you've got a physical problem right now, if you've got some kind of discomfort in your body, um, there's emotional baggage that's a part of that, and it may be all of it. I mean, imagine releasing that and having that go away. Uh,
Mm.
it's uh, it's something that you have to be open to try, because I mean, think about it. What would you rather do? Would you rather keep taking the medication to deal with the depression or the anxiety, or whatever it is else that you're dealing with? Maybe by releasing the emotional baggage, your body might be able to heal itself. And see, that's the whole premise, right? That I think we were talking about in the very beginning, that the body is a self-healing organism.
Right.
It just needs a little help sometimes because things get in the way of the body's ability to heal itself. And so the emotion code and the body code, they're not cures for anything.
Mm.
All they are is just a way to find the blockages that are in the body that are standing in the body's way of healing itself. Your body can heal itself. Think about when you were a kid. You get a cut on your finger, 2 or 3 days later, it's totally healed. And, you break a bone, that bone's going to heal. You'll never break that bone in the same place again. Body's a self-healing organism. It knows how to take care of itself.
Mm.
But we're so conditioned now in the world that we live in by the massive marketing campaign of the drug companies. It's been going on for decades, all of our lives, really, conditioning us to believe that the only way to take care of ourselves is with drugs.
Right.
One of these days, Laura, I'm gonna hire somebody to listen to record every single drug ad and then just put together all the side effects into one long greatest hits reel. Be amazing, right?
Oh God, horrible death.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question before we wrap up. Something that we didn't touch upon, but it's really important. Will you please talk about what a heart wall is?
Yes, absolutely. Well, the ancient societies believed that the heart was the seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance and really the core of our being. And in the modern era, we've never really given those ancient ideas any credence, really. Because if you go into any medical school or you look in any medical textbook or biology textbook, you'll read about how the heart is just a pump. I mean, granted, it's kind of a complicated pump, but that's all it is. It's just a pump. It's just muscle. It just pumps blood. That's all it is. But it was back in the 70s they discovered that the heart actually has a little brain in it that has gray matter and white matter in it. And that most of the messages traveling between the brain and the heart are traveling from the heart to the brain, indicating that the brain that's in our heads is obeying the messages sent by the brain that's in our hearts. Well, the ancients believed that the heart, they looked on the heart in a completely different way than we do. They believed the heart was a seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance, and that it was really the core of our being. Well, new instrumentation, new ways to measure the body in much finer degrees are indicating that those ancient peoples were actually apparently right. Because when you're feeling love or affection for another person, your heartbeat can become measurable in their brain waves. And the heart puts out this magnetic field that goes out around the body, 6 feet in diameter, and or 6 feet out from the core, 12 feet in diameter.
Mm.
And so it's easily the most powerful organ in the body. When people get heart transplants, and this is the other thing that started to be the beginning of us getting clued in about the heart and what a special organ it is. Back in the 60s, when they started doing heart transplants, they would find certain patients would come back and say things like, well, my taste in music has totally changed, or my taste in sports, or I now have memories of being in places I've never in my life ever visited. Can you explain this? Am I losing my mind? And in every case, when these people were connected with the family of the heart donor, they would find, well, yes, our daughter visited Rome every year. It was her favorite city in the world. And now you have memories of being in Rome, but you say you've never, ever visited Rome. And those must be her memories. How bizarre, right? Yeah, I mean, there are books written about this. It's so fascinating and so fun. But in fact, one story was a 9-year-old girl who started having nightmares after receiving the heart of another girl who had been murdered. And she was seeing in her nightmares the death, the murder of this other girl. In fact, it was so consistent. Her parents took her to the police, and her descriptions of the murderer and what he was wearing, as well as the murder weapon, led to the arrest and conviction of the killer of the donor. I mean, think about that.
Wow.
Yeah. It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they call it cellular memory, and it's been known about for a long, long time. But basically, what happens is the heart is everything the ancients believed it to be. It's the core of your being and the seat of the soul. And so when you feel like your heart is going to break because you're really deeply hurt, or someone is someone has left you, or there's a relationship that's breaking down, or whatever it might be, or someone's died, you can feel like your heart is going to break. And it's a physical feeling, right? You can feel like there's an elephant sitting on your chest, or like you can't breathe, like you're choking. Well, in those circumstances, we call that heartache, by the way.
Mm.
And when that's happening, your heart is really under assault. And so the subconscious mind will put up a wall around the heart. And that wall happens to be made of pure energy. In this case, the energy of some of your emotional baggage.
Mm.
But it's a wall, nevertheless, into the subconscious mind. It puts up this force field, in a sense, around your heart, made of layers, typically, of your emotional baggage. And it's an effort to protect the heart from being totally broken, because it is the core of your being. It's the most vulnerable part of you. And that's why, if you're feeling particularly vulnerable about something, your hand might cover your chest, right? Your hand might go to your heart. By the same token, if you're listening to someone singing or playing or performing in some just superlative way, you'll feel it in your heart, won't you? You'll get tears in your eyes, and you'll see people's hands go to their heart, because you see the heart is really the core of our being. We're just scratching the surface on this too. But what we have found is that when people put up a wall around the heart, it makes it much more difficult for them to connect with other people or to connect with the higher power. It makes it more difficult for them to feel love and joy. It makes it easier to feel negative emotions, and it makes it harder for them to really manifest into the world the perfect blueprint that lies within their heart. And so, by the way, Laura, here's a big reason why this world is so messed up right now, and has been for so long. 93% of people on this planet have a wall around their heart.
Mm.
And so they can't really feel anything. I mean, we feel with this brain. We feel with our heart brain. We don't feel with this brain that's in our head. And so if your heart is walled off, you're not really feeling anything. And so it makes perfect sense to, if you're in the government, it makes perfect sense to drop bombs on people to settle differences between nations, right?
Right. No
And
compassion, no empathy, right?
no, no, because this brain feels nothing. Compassion and empathy, those come from this brain. And so this is a big piece of the puzzle, see, of changing this world and bringing this world to a new state. The next millennium, which is coming, I think, soon.
Mm-hmm.
And the world is in so much turmoil now because we see all these old power structures that have had control over mankind, and they see the writing on the wall, and they don't want to give up their power. So there's a lot of crazy things happening now. We see it all around us, but we know how the story ends. And we know that eventually we're going to be living in a world where everyone is living from their heart and creating that perfect blueprint that lies within them. And in that world, Laura, I believe that this next iteration of mankind that's coming, we're going to be going from one moment of joy to another moment of joy, one moment of beauty to another moment of beauty, for the rest of our lives and for the rest of the ages, because we're eternal beings.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I believe. And I think that's where we're going. And I think, we're getting close. It's going to be a struggle to get there, but
It's gonna be, yeah, it's
eventually
a little
we'll
messy
get
to
there.
get there, but I actually heard that that's how mankind started out, was in that high level of consciousness, and so much has been kind of hijacked. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, we could have that one if you want sometime.
Bro, I'd love to. I'd love to. Anyway, where can people get in touch with you, find out more if they want to do the trainings, if just they want to find out more about Discover Healing?
Yeah, the best website really is discoverhealing.com. That's our company name, Discover Healing Inc. So discoverhealing.com. And people can find out information there about, they can read, we have thousands of testimonials they can read that are really interesting and really fun. Testimonials about animals. It's also worked with animals. So, you can work on your own dog or your cat or your horse or
With
whatever.
my cat.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, they can also, there's a map there of the whole world, and you can find a practitioner there to work with you if you want. There's information there about certification, and Yeah. So that's the place to go, discoverhealing.com. My own personal site is at drbradleynelson.com. It's drbradleynelson.com.
And I'll
And
have all the links will be in the show notes.
yeah, there's more information there about my personal beliefs and things like that. But anyway, thanks so much, Laura. It's great to see you again. And thank you so much for having me on your show. We'll have to do this
Thank
again.
you. So good to see you again. Thank you for making the time. This is a very busy man, by the way. He's traveling all over the world constantly. So the fact that we got him back home for the 5 minutes he's home before he heads out to the next place. So, so much gratitude. And I'm so grateful you have created this because not only for myself, but my clients and people and family that I work with, just this is really, really life changing. So I'm so grateful for that. So thank you.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you. I'm just on a mission.
Mm,
This is what my life is for. Is to bring this work into the world, and everything that's happened to me in my whole life has prepared me to do this, to bring this work into the world. So I just want to thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be on your show and get this information out to some more people that
mm,
need it. So thank you, Laura. I
thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next time. Bye bye.